power, there was an arrangement in place.
Yeah.
In every town and city at a local level, there was an arrangement in place between what was, and I keep saying the Labour Party because that's what the dominant party is in these multicultural sort of communities. And there was an arrangement in place where the local white politicians would take care of the Asian politicians, usually at the expense of the white working class. And over a period of time, the Asian politicians, the Pakistani and Bangladeshi politicians, the communities decided they could represent themselves.
Yeah.
And you've seen that transition take place where those white politicians have been replaced by Pakistani and Bangladeshi Muslim politicians who are more than happy just to represent and champion for their own community needs. And you're seeing now move on to the next level where they're not satisfied with just being in charge of council seats. They want the MP seats. And you've seen the four sectarian Islamist MPs. Yeah. No, why do we need the Labour Party when we can represent ourselves?
Exactly. Could you give us an idea, Raja, of how these kind of networkings work when it comes to the road gangs? I mean, because we've got the police, we've got social services under the council, local politicians. The way it's portrayed in the media, and of course, there is obviously a lot in this, is that they sort of wholesale just simply ignored it. But it's not just simply ignoring it because it's politically kind of ideologically inconvenient, is it? It's about votes too, isn't it?
And that's what I've always maintained. And I'm so, if there is a win in the journey we've been on, and the latest interest in this subject is people now are accepting the position that I've been shouting about. This isn't about maintaining community relations. This isn't even about ignoring the needs of working class white girls and thinking, they've made lifestyle choices and all the horrible things that they used to describe. This was a calculated exchange. And that calculated exchange was looking the other way. And in return for looking the other way, those who control the votes in that community continue to provide the votes in that community to the Labour Party. 100%.
How did it work then on a practical level?
On a practical level, okay. So there was a guy in Rochdale, the most infamous of the grooming gang leaders was a man called Shabir Ahmed. He was known as Daddy. He's due out of prison, I think, next year, but he served 22 years in prison. At a local level, Daddy was employed by the council. He was employed by the council and seconded to the Pakistani Community Centre. Of course, the Pakistani Community Centre then made sure that the votes went en masse to whoever the Labour candidate was.
Was this done through postal vote?
Postal vote. So Tony Blair had introduced postal voting for anyone, and very quickly people worked out that all you needed was a signed postal vote. The X left empty, and you'd harvest them, you'd collect them. So you'd collect them via the community centres, you'd collect them via the mosques, you'd collect them via the informal networks that these men operated through. Of course, organised crime moved in. The same sort of network of heroin dealers moved into this area. They know what they've got their own way of doing this, and they can also knock on your door and remind you that you're not registered to postal vote. And would you like to register to postal vote? What are you going to do when someone like that knocks on your door? You're going to sign the form and hand it over because it's not worth the hassle. So the likes of Shabir Ahmed were also prominent members of the Labour Party. They kept it hidden. We exposed it. In fact, it was a senior Labour Party politician who contacted me to tell me, Raja, did you know Shabir Ahmed was one of ours? Regularly out of Michael Meach's office, it was the Labour Party MP, and also a man called Phil Willis, who was removed, I think, from being an MP. He actually got in trouble under the Misrepresentation of People's Act for some of his election leaflets that he produced. So these guys were the kingpin connect, they are supplying the politicians with the votes, coordinating that. The MPs, of course, can say, we didn't know about this, which, the deniability is, of course, there. But the system underneath was heavily dependent on postal votes. And in return, these men wielded power, which is why Shabir Ahmed, 9 times, we forced out of Andy Burnham's investigators that they let him go 9 times.
Really?
Yeah. And the reason they let him go wasn't they missed it. The reason they let him go was because he was protected. And the only reason a man like that could have been protected was because of the political system in which he operated it and the power he held within that.
But how far up do you think people you were talking about local politics? Or actually, no, you've mentioned people who've gone on.
No, this is national. And what we talk about in terms of how postal votes are harvested and the exchange of that, my phone is full of emails from people from Birmingham all the way to Blackburn. In every community where there is a demographic like mine, with the political space, such as what I make reference to, the electoral fraud to take place using harvested postal votes, and I guarantee if you scratch the surface, in most of those places you'll find the grooming gangs operating the same way. Now you can say they're parallel and have nothing to do with each other, and I will say to you, bring on the national inquiry, and you will see exactly what's gone on, and you will see how vital it is that whichever government comes in next to fight, and fights against the Labour administration, they've got to take steps to safeguard our democracy, and they've got to announce reforms in postal voting.